All right, we are live on YouTube. Welcome everyone to Goddess Vibrations, the spiritual sexual empowerment show. I am Natasha Edwina, and I am here with Angela Rivero. She is a radical self-trust coach. She focuses on women's empowerment. She's a graduate of the amazing Layla Martin's sexuality coaching program. I don't know exactly what she calls it, but it's an amazing program. I know a couple other sister goddesses that have been through it. Her newsletter is amazing as well. And we are here to talk about radical self-trust. And so welcome, Angela. And if you want to, you could change your name to your website if you want people to get on there. You don't have to do it now, but if you want to do that throughout the show, you could do that so people know where to find you as we talk.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so here we are, and I am, maybe you want to share a little bit about how you got into this work, maybe how you were enticed into becoming credentialed in women's empowerment and sexuality work. Just a little bit about you while I get my screen set up over here so that I can see comments.
Sure. Yeah, I've been, I guess, going into the whole feminine the last few years, and I did Mama Gina's Master University thing that we all did together, and that led me to Layla Martin, and I just felt so called and drawn to it because I feel like sexuality is like a huge missing link for a lot of women, and creating that safety is like what I'm really about. And so when I decided to become certified, I was, what do I really want to, tell women about? And although I'm a sex love and relationship coach, this big download of radical self-trust came to me. And that's why I started working around this particular topic, because I feel like it's like a foundation of everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And so one thing I was curious about when you and I were talking about radical self-trust, and that might mean something to me. I posted something on Instagram about intuition. Um, I'm curious about what that means to you, what that might mean to some of the clients that you're working with. I think we've both been through Mama Gina's School of Womanly Arts, and she talks about GPS and pussy, and really I thought, well, okay, listening to your pussy and your what she calls the great pussy in the sky is radical self-trust too, right? It's about a way of tuning into your intuitive center. And I'm in speaking of the women that we were introduced to through the School of Womanly Arts, I'm in Sheila Kelly's virtual program right now, going through that and enjoying that. And she said, put your hand on the area where you, like, first put your hand on the area where you might radiate your love from, or you make love from. And so for me, that was my heart. It wasn't, my pussy, it was my heart. And then where is the area where your intuition is? And that was somewhere between, my abdomen and my pussy. So it was just like this area right here. I thought that was really interesting because there's this body knowing that's different than what we might think in our head.
Yeah.
And I asked a friend yesterday, we were trying to decide which beach to go walking. I know we have it rough over here in San Diego, right? And she had this idea, she had her mind set where this place she wanted to go, and I didn't want to go because it hurts my feet because there's so many rocks. And I said, okay, well, you ask your pussy, I'll ask my pussy, and we'll see if that's. She's like, but I already know what it's going to say. I'm like, but you didn't ask, so let's just close our eyes for a minute and ask, and it could be the same thing or it might be something different. And sure enough, it was the other beach is what the answer that she got when she really tuned in with her body. So those are some examples of what maybe radical self-trust means to me, but how do you define it? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, for me, it's like a journey because we're always evolving and changing every day, right? And so it's the taking the time to connect in on a regular basis. Because as like I said, every day we're going to be a little different. And can you imagine if we connected in every single day for a year, how different we'd probably feel and be? And so you can't just define it as one thing, right? Because you might not be that way in a few years or whatever. So I just think that it's this genuine connection to ourselves. And so that's going to look different for me than it is for one of my clients or from you, like you said, right? And that's what I'm also really passionate about too, is that I help women find out what that is. because we're also unique. We have that unique essence inside of us. And like you said, even like maybe the heart or even the solar plexus, like where we really have this uniqueness.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I feel like self-trust is. It's not like a singular thing. It's just like coming home to ourselves over and over because, we live in a super loud world, right? And so if we don't take that intentional time to like slow down and listen in, like how are we going to hear ourselves? And
Mhm.
so that's how we establish trust. It's just those simple moments of like coming back over and over. And so that's how I see self-trust.
Yeah, I love that. Coming back over and over. I like to say, about my work, I do all kinds of different things, but really what the common thread is I like to bring people back to their soul, like back
Mhm.
to their soul wisdom. And my particular energy medicine modality that I do that with is hypnosis, right? So that's
Mm.
kind of, and I've been told by some spiritual channels that that's when I'm at my purest, like helping or form is when I'm leading hypnosis, and it makes sense because what that seems to be the service that I almost never advertise, and people over and over request,
Mm.
from me.
Yeah.
And then I recently met somebody in another kind of an energy medicine group, and just in a short little conversation, and then her watching the show, she had said, "Oh, I'm so glad to have connected with you because I feel like I'm coming back to myself, or like coming back to my soul." And I was like, yes. But
Mhm.
that's really, if we all did that, we would save so much, well, money, time, um, just heartache, heartbreak. I don't know. Do you have any stories from maybe your clients or times when they didn't trust themselves and ended up in some trouble, or maybe a time when they did trust themselves and they ended up like really, you know, dodging a bullet, basically? I mean, I have a couple of those stories too.
Yeah. I mean, without going into too much detail, there's a client of mine who something that she kept always disappearing from herself all the time, which is really common for women, right? And when she was really been able to embody that what I need matters and like connect inside with that, her whole life started to shift because she was going through a really difficult divorce, and so it was just that when she was able to trust that like what was important to her and was able to listen inside to her, like her life just started to blossom and she was able to make choices to really shift her life into how she wants to live. And so now she's just so much happier and like so much more at ease and calm from it. So
Yeah, I think divorce does that too. Having been divorced myself, and guiding other people through that process or that healing is
mhm.
just it's a shake up. Everything breaks up and shakes up, and it's an opportunity really to go in and be like, well, what do I want? And any breakup, even if it's not a divorce,
Yeah.
any breakup really, that you've been together for some time will do that. And
Yeah.
it's funny because as I asked you that question, I like went to set my kombucha back on my table and it spilled over and toppled over. And so now I've got pink like berry kombucha splatters all over me, but I'm trusting. I'm trusting that that was meant to be, and it's the same color as your top, so there's some synchronicity there.
Yeah.
Um I just yeah, got a little wet over here already.
Nice,
so,
nice.
so that's all good signs. But yeah, it's like finding out who you really are before you were maybe in service to what everybody else wanted.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about knowing what, I have a little bit on my hair splashed all the way over here. I love knowing um, that, you know, what you said about how knowing what fills you up
Mhm.
is what's good for everyone else too.
Yeah.
How, especially as women, we're the connectors, we're the glue of society, of our families. We work through collaboration, we work holistically, we look at the long range plan. Maybe that's programmed into us because we have to wait 3 trimesters to grow a baby. I don't know exactly, what that energy is, but that is the feminine energy. It's not quick, it's not a shortcut, you know it's not focusing just on this one little path. It's looking at all the paths. And I think when you have that breakdown, you have an opportunity to really realign,
Yeah.
and then maybe save some time too.
Yeah, totally.
I shared a story, of just a little bit of it on my Instagram post, advertising this show. And it was a powerful story. I think about it often because it was one of my business mentors and his wife. And she was on the Olympic ski team, and he was a competitive skier as well. And they were serious athletes. So they couldn't find a nutritional product. They're in their 70s, so this is a long time ago, but they couldn't find a nutritional product that had enough nutrients in it that were pure and potent that they could use to supplement their training and what they needed as professional athletes who were putting a lot of demand on the body. And so they created their own product, and they had a scientist and a whole team. And what ended up happening is they let an investor in to their company, and he said he had a bad feeling in his gut about this investor, but everybody was like, no, this is what we need to do, we need the money to like expand the company and all this. And he let the investor in, and eventually the investor took over basically
Mhm.
and convinced the rest of the investors to cheapen the product in order to have a higher profit margin. And that was their whole point of starting the company, was to have a really good high quality product. And now there's no reason. So they got outvoted basically of their own company, and they lost everything. They had 3 children, they lost their home, they lost everything that they
Okay.
had worked so hard for. And he was so upset that he didn't listen to his intuition, and he said to me, I've never gone wrong. Anytime I truly listen to my intuition, it's only the times that I talk to myself out of it. And
Mhm.
I think about this all the time with, some of the body sovereignty and health freedom and medical freedom conversations that are going on right now. It's like, what if your intuition is screaming at you? It's frightening and terrifying for me to have a law forcing you to do something that your intuition is like, no, 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 but there's so many other examples of that too. And when I think back, even, talking about relationships and marriage and divorce, I
Yeah.
also, my intuition was telling me not to get married. It was telling me, I was at the courthouse and I was nervous as heck. The night before, I was nervous. I called my dad. I said, is this normal to be so nervous on your wedding night? And the night before, and he's like, oh yeah, that's probably nervous. I probably should have talked to my mom instead of my dad. But it ended up being that, I don't regret being in a relationship with this person, but the marriage and making it legal cost me so much money.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
Not only in the money that I lost through sharing finances with somebody who was kind of content to now kick up their feet and rest, and but also through the divorce process, through the lawyers, through all this stuff. However, I feel like the soul corrects, right? And having gone through that experience and having to learn how really corrupt even the court system is, and how it's not really for the best of the children, although it claims to be. It gave me a perspective I couldn't have experienced had I not experienced it firsthand from my
Right.
clients. And also, having gone through my own parents' divorce from a young age and spending a lot of time in the courthouse, I was traumatized to even step in a courthouse. So having to go regularly for 4 hours, or 4 hours, I wish, 4 years through my own divorce
Yeah.
was healing, interestingly enough,
Yeah.
because it was like, they say if you're afraid of flying, then you have to start desensitizing yourself and getting closer and closer to getting on the plane. That's basically what I had to do, is, continue to go to the courthouse. So
Mhm.
it's interesting. I have to say that his story touched me because I had the same experiences in my life. When I think about times that I followed my intuition, or moving out to San Diego, I just felt a rush of energy. And the first time I ever visited San Diego, I felt like I was home.
Oh,
And I was
beautiful.
like, this is interesting. I think I'm probably going to live here one day. Like, this feels way too familiar. And
Mm,
now I've been here longer than I've lived anywhere else,
nice.
for almost 20 years. So, yeah,
Mhm.
it's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we all experience those things where we don't follow our intuition. And I think trust has got to do with also like acknowledging yourself in a lot of ways. I know Mama Gina brags and things like that. And
Mhm.
um, when I started talking about self-trust, I'm like, can I talk about self-trust with people? Do I trust myself enough to do that? And then I went on this little journey of like, okay, yeah, I've actually really trusted myself. And the more I did that, I was like, wow, I really have. Like, I've really connected and made choices that weren't necessarily easy, and maybe weren't necessarily approved of by other people. But I was like, this is what's right for me. And I've done that so much in my life, and especially the last few years. And so, one of the things I really tell my clients is to really acknowledge where you're at, like where you trust yourself now. And from there, you'll start to see that you already have a lot of that trust. And from there, you can even build more and more trust. And that's why it comes back to like this evolving journey, right? Because it's not like, oh, I trust myself one day and then it's like you're done. It's like one of those things that you just keep coming back all the time. And so that's served me a lot, is that acknowledgement of myself. And that's how I serve other people as well, is for them to really see themselves.
Mhm.
'Cause I think we really want to be seen by other people too, and heard, to be witnessed. But I think there's a missing link that we're not seeing ourselves enough, because I think we really do want to connect with ourselves and connect in, um, and to be heard by ourselves, and then with other people as well. But if we're like skipping and bypassing ourselves and only hearing everybody else's thoughts on trust or opinions about whatever we're doing, we're missing a huge part of ourselves. And I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I think we might have that awareness in subtle ways too, and not recognize. For instance, there was a time about a year ago where I was feeling frustrated because I felt like, especially as a businesswoman and everything that I've got to offer, I wasn't fully being seen. And I
Mhm.
just had this string of clients that were like trying to negotiate my fee and talk it lower. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I spent $500,000 on my education. No, like, no, like I'm not being seen for what value I bring and this sort of thing. And then I would notice, like in my dance circle that I would go to on the weekends, I often didn't want to go in the middle of the circle. I
Mhm.
often didn't want to be seen. I have a soft voice. It doesn't always project very far. It's like almost like not being heard in some these subtle ways, right? And it's like, do we get to pick and choose where we're seen and where we're not seen, or is it like we're seen or we're not seen? That's what I'm curious about. But I noticed that came up for me. And so I'm wondering, in your own personal practice, because I like this idea of continually coming back to ourselves that you mentioned. How do you personally continue every day coming back to yourself and checking in with yourself to see what you actually need? Because I know for me, I'm programmed on others to focus on what other people need.
Yeah.
And I have to get into the habit of like waking up and like, wait, ask yourself first, what do you need? And I've talked to some men that they have a practice where they wake up in the morning and their habit is to think about others because they they automatically think of themselves. So I think this is like a cultural thing as well, right? And they're trying to rebalance it by doing the opposite. So
Yeah.
what is your practice?
Well, I definitely think there's a lot of conditioning about that, right? That we're celebrated for serving everybody else all the time, right? And so it's like we're not at fault for like serving everybody else because that's what we're totally told to do, right? So as far as being seen or not being seen, that part, I think it's really important to honor where you're at in each moment.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can be wide open and be seen and feel really good at that. And then sometimes you need to be a little shy and like just be like, I need a moment. So like I think it's about honoring where you're at. Cause like I said, we're different all the time. Like I can be shy like one time and then the next time I'm like, hello everyone. You know what I mean? So like it's just really like slowing down and honoring that. And it takes practice. But for as far as my own practice, it's mostly pretty simple. Because I think that we could think it's really complicated to come back to ourselves, but it could just be laying in stillness and silence for a few minutes. And then this way I can hear my voice. I connect to my felt sense, so the sensations of my body, because a lot of times we're like way up here, right? And so when I can really come back into my body, even if it's just for a few moments, that helps me a lot. And also to connecting to my needs. 'Cause a lot of times we have unmet needs because we don't even know what they are. And so at the end of the day, I will be like, okay, what was missed today? Like I know that I had this reaction, or I didn't feel very seen, or I felt something was felt a little bit off. So at the end of the evening, even just for a few moments, I'm like, oh, I needed connection, or I needed love today, or I needed more freedom today. And so those are the top ways that I really come back to myself, is coming into my body and then connecting to my needs and allowing time for stillness. Because if you don't, there's no way you're going to hear yourself and what you need, and what your body's trying to tell you and all those type of things. So
Hmm. Yeah, and I like the the idea that there's different ways that we might do that, and that we're feeling different on each day, and that's why it's so important to have a daily practice or a regular practice. And I know for me, the last couple of years, I've gotten into the habit of, just when somebody asks me a question, and I'm not good at making decisions anyway. I have Libra rising, so it's like, oh man, I will tell you if I feel strongly about like where I want to go to eat or whatever, but if I don't, please make the decision for me. I just, one less thing I need to do.
yeah.
But I will tune in now, and I will ask my body, and I'll let people wait, like, hold
Mhm.
on a minute, and I'll close my eyes and I'll breathe. And probably most of the people think I'm totally weird, but that's my way to just pause and be mindful about what I'm about to say, or check in with myself first. And I also do this with emails, text messages.
Mhm.
If it's an important email, or it has emotional charge to it, or content or whatever else, I will check in and I'll say, how does this, is this email, prepared to send? And if I get like a dead zone in my torso or my pussy or whatever, I'm like, okay, it's not okay to send. But if it is okay, then I get a little zing,
Yeah.
or a feeling of warmth in my belly, or a little butterfly feeling, and that's my way I talk to my intuition. And sometimes when it's not okay to send, then I have to go through, and I have to go, and I do this sometimes with Instagram posts too. And I actually did this today with the post, that I, the last post that I did to advertise this show. And I had to break down it. Is it this sentence? No. Is it this sentence? No. Is it the hashtags? No. What it was is I forgot to tag you. And so then I tagged you, and that's like, then it's like, oh, it's ready. Okay, here it is. So it's like trusting that intuitive hunch inside of us. And then also, I think, so I pause and I slow down, but then also there's a meditation practice, right?
Mhm.
And a daily meditation practice is a way, and they say do it in the morning because it's before the rest of the day has started. And for me, it's very hard to meditate in the morning, even if I'm sitting up, because I'm so sleepy. I'm such a sleepy Taurus. So, like, I wake up, and I do better if I kind of, you know, start with some joy or happy music or kind of movement or something like that. And so I try to lay in bed and think at least gratitudes or happy thoughts or whatever to, start the day. And then I meditate at some point. And then I go through phases in my life where my meditation and my tuning in is movement, like dance. Like
Yeah.
right now, I'm doing a lot of dance, as I shared with you, and I'm feeling so much joy running through my body, so much awareness, so much knowing about what would be pleasurable for me, so much clarity. And that, I had the thought, perhaps if you are a woman and quiet, still meditation is not doing it for you right now,
Yeah.
perhaps you just need to move. The masculine is still, it's like the riverbanks to the flow, and the feminine can find her clarity sometimes in the flow.
Yeah.
And so I think there's several different ways to actually get in touch with this intuitive sense. Also, I was spent a lot of time in nature yesterday, so nature
Yeah.
is also beautiful for that.
I love all that. Yeah, as you know, I've also been doing like aspect of practice for many years, and so that's what Sheila Kelly always talks about. It's like a moving meditation, right? So we can feel our
Mm-hmm.
feelings and like move what we need to move and all that stuff. And so I think that's such a powerful practice, is to have movement. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when we want to meditate, we feel like, oh, I can't stop my thoughts and I can't do this, and then we feel kind of hard on ourselves. And when we can allow things to flow and have more ease, I feel like that's more in the feminine anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more pleasure in that for a lot of women. So it's really a beautiful practice.
Yeah. Would you be willing to say more about what your S Factor practice has done for you, or maybe even say what S Factor is? Because I haven't even gotten to that phase. I
Yeah.
love Sheila Kelly. I was really struck by her work in the School of Womanly Arts in
Mhm.
2018 when I first was acquainted with her. And now she has a Netflix documentary out called, what is it? Do you know the name of it? Strip and Rise or something?
Um, Strip down and rise up, I believe.
Okay, Strip Down and Rise Up. And I haven't seen it, but I think I saw the promo, the trailer for it, which was really powerful. But it sounds like she's taking women through the a journey of sensual movement and pole dance in order to help them heal some of their um, sometimes even sexual trauma and
Yeah.
kind of reclaiming the body and whatnot. But I think there's a variety of reasons that women are drawn to her work.
Yeah.
And for me, I've felt that after 7 years in a PhD program, I've just been in my head so much. And now that I'm taking a break from the PhD, it's like, oh, yay, I get to get back in the body. It's really hard for me to do both at the same time. Maybe I'll figure that out,
Mm.
how to, give equal space. But for now, my body is so happy, to be moving and experiencing some of this. And I just want to say, acknowledge to TR who left a comment, says, amazing ladies. Thank you so much for tuning in and commenting. So yeah, what is, I mean, you've been at it a lot longer than me, this S Factor thing. So what's it done for you? What have you learned about yourself?
Yeah, I've been doing, I think, 4.5 years, something like that. And I was totally shy when I first went, and I'm like, oh, pole dancing, ah. But people go definitely for different journeys. Some people have trauma, and some people just go because they want to express themselves. They want to be empowered in their eroticism. For me personally, it's definitely helped me to get to where I am today. Um, I feel like life has been a really beautiful, like, stepping stone of different things, and definitely S Factor was a big part of me going to Mama Gina's and then going to Layla Martin's training. And it's just given me a certain amount of confidence and connection to my body. And one of the most important parts is that I was able to, like, express all my emotion and to be witnessed in that. Because, like, so much of the time we're, like, told to only be happy and joyful, and don't be angry, don't be sad, don't be any of the other things, right? And don't talk about your shame or whatever it is. And so what Sheila Kelly really did is that she did combine pole dancing, but with movement. It's not just simply pole dancing. Like, there's just, you can do so many different things in the class, which is the greatest part. So even if you're not good at the pole, you can do whatever type of movement. Um, but it's like this magic of being able to express whatever has come up in that day and to be able to release it. And the most important part is also being witnessed by other women, right? Because sometimes we're so alone in our journeys, and, like, we're, like, kind of behind closed doors in our emotions, right? And so having a community of women stand by you and, like, celebrate you for all parts of you is pretty huge and amazing. So that way, it's been a huge transformation. Yeah, I just feel more empowered in my own body, more connected, more confident, all the things. Yeah.
I love how you said too, how we have to express and then also be witnessed,
Yeah.
because people can write in a journal and work with their feelings, and express their feelings, but they might hire a therapist to be witnessed by maybe a professional. For me, and in my years of, I am a therapist, but before even becoming a therapist, when I would go to therapy, that having an older, wiser, usually woman, I think I saw mostly women,
Yeah.
um, was very validating to me to have my whatever my thoughts were witnessed by this professional person who's like, no, that's totally normal, or that you have a right to feel that way, or you aren't too much, or you aren't broken, or you aren't this, or you aren't, that was like probably the most powerful thing. And you don't get that really unless you're witnessed. But also just to be witnessed for your strength and your resilience and your beauty that isn't always the beauty or strength or resilience that society sees, right?
Yeah.
Especially in women. And I know that I've got a trauma healing group, it's a mind body healing group starting September 13th. And
Nice.
it's a small group, and that is so much the power of a group, to be witnessed, to first learn how to express, feel safe enough to then be able to express and become aware of
Mhm.
those feelings, and then speak it and be witnessed and have other people say, I hear you, or I see you. The power of that healing is so underestimated, I
Yeah.
think. It can lift so much. And yeah, but I think I can't stress enough either the safety of who's witnessing. And so when you can find a community of people, whether it's pole dancing, whether it's one of my groups, whether it's, working with you one on one, whatever it is,
Yeah.
there's got to be that safety and that connection there before you can even begin to open up.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's really life changing when you can be held and witnessed for like all parts of who you are.
Hmm.
And even if you're empowered or, a badass, whatever it is, we still all need it. I was even getting coached the other day because I always continue all those things. And she acknowledged some parts of me. And I'm like, oh, that felt really good. That was really nice to be able to have those parts be seen. Um, and even to be seen in your sorrow and your rage and everything, right? And so it really is life changing to be able to have people do that. And I think a lot of the magic lies in that, like having someone hold space for you. Like it sounds simple, but it's actually so magical and transformative. And so it makes a huge difference in people's lives to have that.
Yeah. And so, speaking of holding space, I would love to bring that up in the sexual arena too.
Mhm.
And, that being maybe a traditional masculine energy, right? Holding space,
Mhm.
um, especially in a sexual interaction, because for me, when I was doing my PhD research on mindfulness and female arousal, what I found is that was the thing that made ordinary sex versus extraordinary sex was the safety.
Yeah.
If she felt safe to really open up. So, a masculine partner, or it could be the masculine energied partner in that moment, because we're talking about all genders,
Yep.
all sexualities, is they're holding space and allowing that feminine to open up. What does that, I mean, that I feel that facilitates her self-trust.
Oh
So
yeah.
that facilitates when she's seen for all of her, not just her tight ass or whatever else that is supposed to be sexy in our culture, but she's seen for all of her and everything that she brings, and said that whatever you bring here is okay and I accept and I
Mhm.
love. Then she can start to trust her desires. She can start to trust her body. She can start to trust her sensations.
Mhm.
And there's so much, like, I'm a very self-aware person, and I have spent a lot of time becoming self-aware and working on that and tuning in and all of that. And I'm still always surprised when I do energy work, I go deeper, especially with somebody who's facilitating me, the subtle little things that I find in
Mhm.
my body that my body will tell me that I was not aware of
Mhm.
consciously.
Yeah.
And I had a friend tell me today, she's talking to several men, she's dating, actively dating, and she's talking to, I don't know, maybe had a list of like 8 men, and she did a body scan on each of these men. And so she imagined them and scanned her body to see what her body was feeling in that energy of that man. And she came up with so much information. And because of doing that body scan, she had a conversation with 3 of them today where she said it's not a match, because
Mhm.
she noticed, her pelvis tightening up, or her, like turning away, like her body felt like it was turning away when she brought up his name, or just little things like this. And I was like, wow, that is powerful. But how many times do we have this little feeling, or our body tenses up and we're like, oh, but he's such a nice guy, I shouldn't feel like this. Or I've had men try it, like they want to date me, and I've told them I don't feel chemistry with you, but
Yeah.
I like you. You're a nice man. Like, we have things in common. If you want to go for jog sometime or like work out or be a friend. I'm open to that. But other than that, my body is telling me there's nothing else there beyond that. And
Mhm.
then they try to push it, or they're trying to like bring romance in or take me out to dinner. And I'm like, well, if we hung out and it's time to eat, we can go eat. But because you paid for dinner does not mean that this is a date or that I'm going to kiss you or anything like that. And I've had them, you know, kind of try to move into my space, and I can feel my body just like,
Oh yeah.
pulling away, or it's just an energy that's there. And I think, we need to trust that. That's not when you let them kiss you anyway, or you let them do whatever, but there's so many times I think as a child, especially a female child, where
Yeah.
you're told to just listen to adults, or let give grandma and grandpa a hug, and you don't want to because they smell like booze or whatever, like, or it's just like all of these things that so many times, or even in the school, like there's teachers that'll tell the kids they can't use the bathroom until the bell rings. So now they have to hold their bladder for
Mhm.
45 minutes when they got to pee. It could be doing damage
Oh
to
yeah.
their, in so many times that we are told to ignore our body.
Yeah.
No pain, no gain, that sort of culture. And so I feel like we all have to slow down and start to unwind that, to
Yeah.
really get in touch.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so like critical that we do slow down and connect, because we are like basically taught to please everybody else, even if it's at the expense of our own needs, our own safety, our own trust. And it runs really deep, right? And so that's the whole idea of like having radical self-trust, is that you continue to build this foundation, and when you can feel really safe and regulated and connected to yourself, that you start to really hear the clues of your body. Because if you're completely disconnected from your body and you've never really thought to even connect that way and start to truly listen to your intuition, you're more likely to get in situations that you didn't feel good about, right? And so that's why it's so valuable. And it sounds like in some ways simple, and in some ways maybe not, but um, it really is these times when we are with ourselves and start to understand our body sensations that can make all the huge differences when in our relationships, in our daily lives, in every single way, in my opinion. And so, yeah, instead of being so kind to everybody else and like being like, well, I should be nice, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, of being like, okay, what about my feelings? What about my body? What about my safety? And like, so it's hard to unwind that to some degree, right? Because we're so programmed to take care of everybody else. But it's definitely possible. And it's within reach as long as you decide to make it a journey of always saying, okay, well, what's my truth here? Like,
Mhm.
what do I need from this situation? And being able to learn how to say no and like follow your own intuition and all those type of things, right?
So, what are some questions that one could ask themselves or journal about? Let's say they, decide to wake up in the morning and take some deep breaths and notice how their body is feeling and how they're feeling today. What are some questions they could ask themselves to develop more self trust, or let's say radical self trust? Because I feel like radical too is like, doesn't matter what everybody else is saying. There could be 99 out of 100 people saying,
Yeah.
sky is red.
Yep.
And you're like, but I feel in my bones that the sky is blue. So what kind of questions can you ask yourself to get in touch with what your truth is? And then the second part of the question would be, how do we maintain that even though 99% of the outside world is saying no?
Yeah. Well, definitely when you wake up, something to think about is like, what are your first thoughts when you wake up?
Mhm.
Right? Because sometimes we're so unconscious about it. And sometimes we're like having a little bit of dread from our daily grind or whatever it is. So even just being conscious of that, and then choosing maybe another word or a feeling that, okay, well, next time I want to wake up, and you think about it when you fall asleep, I want to think about pleasure, or I want to feel like joy when I wake up, or I want to feel ease or more slowness when I wake up. That can be really helpful to start your day um, with a different kind of consciousness, right? Of just being like, "Ugh," because I think we're so unconscious about how we wake up, right? So that's a good one from my experience. Well, I think what it is just like I said, just coming back every day and knowing that that's what you're going to have to do. Because I think that a lot of us come into trying things and it's like a kind of quick fix, right? And we're sold that a lot too of like, do this and you're set for life and you don't have to do anything else. And so for me, it's just even knowing that and like trying to embody that by just listening in every day and knowing, okay, there's going to be a lot of chances that I'm going to hear everybody else today. And there's going to be a million opinions of what I should or shouldn't do or how I should look and dress and just basically show up in the world. And so having that as your focus and knowing that that's going to be a reality, even that I think makes a difference in how you're going to show up for yourself. And be like, okay, well, yeah, I feel a little disconnected today, but I just know that I can come back today. And even if other people don't like it, it's still just like the daily practice of that will transform into like a more whole person, right? Of because like I said, if you do it one time, maybe there's not that much connection with self, right? But knowing that if you can come back even a few times a week or once, even a moment of just like, that's how I think you're able to kind of sustain it, right? Because we are that wholeness, but we're like kind of missing our pieces because we're have societal conditioning and like maybe we have shadow pieces that like have our totally lost because we haven't been told that like to bring them into light and accept them and all that stuff. So I think that's just the work, right? It's just knowing that there's those chances and then coming back home.
Hmm. Yeah, one of the pieces that really stood out for me is when you said, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning, about like maybe is there dread going off to work? I think that's huge. I've talked to so many people that are like, I have anxiety. I need to talk to you. You're a therapist. I have anxiety. And I ask them, okay, well, when are you feeling it? What's going on? Well, it's on Sunday night. It's because they have to go back to work.
Yeah.
And I just tell them there's no way that there's nothing we can do about that anxiety really, because the root cause is your job. Like you have to find a different job. You have to find
Mhm.
something else
Yeah.
that you like. And of course, we can't all just wake up and do our dream job right away and, you know, get paid well for it. My daughter's in the ninth grade this year, so they're asking her a lot of career prep class or career prep questions about what classes she wants to take.
Mhm.
And I told her, this is your chance to eat from the buffet and just sample everything, and don't do what people think you need to do. Don't do what you think is going to make money, because this is a very transformative time right now in this world.
Yeah.
If you want to be more arts and creativity, then you probably don't need a bachelor's, that kind of thing.
Mm.
um, and this is coming from somebody who's spent most of her adult life in higher education, and I said, it's taken me 20 years to finally get to the point in my career where I've always wanted to be. It took me 20 years
Mhm.
to get here, and I had to work a lot of jobs that I didn't love and
Yeah.
that I didn't like, but the ones that I couldn't peel myself out of bed for, those were a hell no. Like I would work there for a week or 2 weeks and I'm like, okay, I gotta resign. There's gotta be something else here, because it wasn't worth, that dread or that anxiety. And I remember one of them being at this very corporate, I was a server at this very corporate concept in Scottsdale, Arizona. And there were three different restaurants that you could work at. And one of them, you would wear like these ugly khaki shorts down to your knees and like a white button up top
Yeah.
if you got scheduled there, which you might get scheduled there on a Monday. But then on a Tuesday, you might get scheduled in like the nightclub. And then you got to stand on this platform in go-go boots and little booty shorts and like dance while you pop the top off of beer bottles. And I was like, I am not bipolar enough for this job. I was like, maybe I could do one or the other, but I can't flip back and forth like that. Like I'd have to psych myself up
Yep.
to be able to like do that. So that job definitely didn't last. But whatever it is, like
Mhm.
there's if you're feeling like that in the morning, you got to figure something else out.
Yeah.
And there, it might be bringing you money, but there's got to be another job that can be bringing you money that you can still find some enjoyment. I worked as a bartender. I enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed, because I love music.
Yeah.
And there was always good music playing. I enjoyed flirting. I enjoyed being sarcastic with people sometimes when they were jerks. Like,
Yeah.
as long as I had that bar in between us where they couldn't like grab my ass or anything like that, it was all good. And I enjoy, serving people, serving food, serving drinks, creating new drinks, things like that. That was a fun job for me. Was it what I wanted as a career? Hell no. But it passed the time until I finished my degree. So I think that's one of the pieces that stood out for me, when you're assessing, how much can I trust myself, and to know that you deserve to be doing something that you love. And if you're trying to find that path of what your purpose is, you're going to be your body is going to be telling you a little bit each day in
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's another thing. Like, it's like when we start to get our know our needs and our desires and our body sensations and like all these things start coming together, then we're more likely to know what we truly want to do for our lives, right? And maybe it's not, like you said, quitting our jobs instantly and like doing it, but there's still a lot more freedom when you start to really connect those pieces and start to come back to yourself, because then you can make your decisions based on those needs and desires, and then start to shift your life in the right direction. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of value about slowing down and being with yourself, because
Mhm.
I mean, as you saw at Mastery, like women would be hysterically crying. So like, I have no idea what I desire. Like, no one's ever asked me that. I have no idea what I want. And so like all the simple things and the daily practices are what make our lives, right? Because our little habits is what ends up being our lives. It's not only the big moments, right? And so taking those times to find out what those things are can shift your life a lot.
Oh, it's so powerful. The small moments, absolutely. That's what creates life.
Yeah.
I once went to Kauai and I stayed with this older couple, um, who was a friend of one of my friends I was traveling with. And they were kind enough to allow us in and be visitors at this gorgeous house that I don't know if they had rented it or they bought it. And my friend was asking them, how did you create this life? Like, how did you create this lifestyle? And their story to me was very sad, and I realized I couldn't do it. It was a story of deprivation for many decades
Yeah.
to save up enough money, and then they finally could cash it in now in Kauai, and they live
Mhm.
there half of the time. So now, hopefully, all is well. But they've had health problems. They've had, all these issues because of, I feel, perhaps living a life of deprivation for all those decades in a shitty, polluted town, where the rent was cheap and they could buy something cheap or whatever, and saving for this big day. But what if that big day never comes, and you
Yeah.
spend 45 years or 50 years, um, in a state of deprivation? That's just not my style. And even going through a PhD program, there's a lot of things that I had to delay gratification, especially with social time. I don't, I had to say no to birthday parties, like barbecues, going out to the movies, parties, like all these things that are kind of like normal life. I often said no to because I was writing a paper or studying, and there was going to be this payout. But also I couldn't have made it through the last 7 years if I didn't take breaks sometimes, to get back into my body, to reconnect, to stop and enjoy dating, or that just human connection,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And I but how I did it and how I lasted that long was almost every day dancing,
Mm.
meditation, exercise, eating well, so keep my endorphins high,
Yeah.
nature, going to the beach, fitting these things in. Of course, I'd have to fit it in with like five other things at the same time that I was doing to make it work. But how are we bringing that enjoyment and pleasure of, like, once we find the desires, as you said,
Yeah.
how are we then making it a daily practice and actually giving it space? And I'll say one of the hardest things for me to even put into place is like a regular self-pleasure practice.
Mhm.
Even though I love to talk about this stuff and I know the concept, but to actually carve out that time every day,
Yeah.
and so for me it kind of goes along with dancing. Like, dancing is more so probably like that self pleasure practice. So
Mm. Yeah.
I think but then it's when you're in it and you're actually spending the time on yourself, life gets exponentially better.
Yes, for sure. Well, I mean, I've heard this concept of like microdosing pleasure. And so like we think of pleasure or like self-care as of going to get a massage or, doing something more grand. And the thing is we can bring pleasure into our daily lives in the smallest moments, like taking up even like a few seconds to feel the breeze on your skin and being really intentional about really feeling it on your skin, right? Bringing a blanket to your desk if you're working, or like listening to an audible book when you're in the kids pickup line or whatever it is. And like, so really asking yourself is another practice of like, how can I make what I'm already doing more pleasurable?
Hmm.
Because most of us don't have time to like add like all these huge things or even like 30 minutes of things to do. And so the more we can make our daily regular things pleasurable, the better our lives are going to be, right? Um, and sometimes we get stuck with the idea of self-pleasuring because it seems like a job or whatever it is.
Hmm.
We all have like a sexual narrative, right, from how we grow up. And so that's one of the things that I do too, is during my work with female sexuality, is just like finding out what your sexual story is. Because whether our parents never spoke about it or we were told we were, a slut or whatever it is, we have all these ideas, right, and what it should be. And so a lot of times we're kind of know it, but we're also really unconscious that we have this really strong sexual story, right? And so when we can really reclaim that and rewrite it, and like what self-pleasuring means or whatever it is that we want to connect to, it's a lot of power in that, because then we're taking those things back for ourselves and creating a new narrative.
Yeah, I love that. A new narrative.
Yeah.
I realized that when I was in my early 30s, I realized I'd lost myself when I stopped, and it happened slowly, but I had two children now, and one was less than a year old, a baby in diapers. I was still breastfeeding him, and I was working full time,
Mm.
and I had stopped listening to music. And I used to go to concerts all the time. Even being in school, I'd find time to go to concerts as a music lover. And I'd stopped listening to music, and instead I was listening to NPR in the morning, because here I am, a new mother, trying to be a conscientious human on the planet, and responsible being, and being educated and aware of all these things. So on my way to work, I'm listening to NPR. Now I'm informed, right? And I know
Yeah.
what's going on in the world, and I'm doing my civic duty. But I slowly started to lose any really enjoyment of life, or um, pleasure. And so what I started doing is just listening to music that I used to enjoy, like some of my favorite bands, and just forcing myself to only play music in the morning. And I still do that now. Like have to remember, because I like the silence too. I have a TV, it's never on. And even when it is on, it's usually subtitles. I tell the kids. So I enjoy the silence, but now I kind of force myself to put on music in the morning, because it does make such a difference. And I resonate with the, even these small ways to microdose pleasure in that way. Or checking in with myself, do I really want the hot lemon water this morning? I know it's really good for my digestive system, but maybe I want some tea instead, or maybe I want some
Mhm.
bulletproof coffee, or something like that instead. So I really make it a point to check in with that stuff, because you're right, it does absolutely shape the day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I also really enjoy listening to music when I know that I have sadness or anything else. I like to listen to sad music so that I can like have those things start to flow and move as well. So there's pleasure within feeling like our grief and rage and things too, and being able to just, yeah, let it flow. And so music can do wonders for feeling joy and motivation, and also really connect to all our emotions. So I love that about music.
It is so true. I used to be really numb and stoic, and I felt like I was fine because I didn't feel sad,
Mm-hmm.
right? But now I know, when I feel sad, there is a beauty in the sadness. It's like, oh, I'm feeling so sad because I was so happy
Hmm.
before. Like if I did, and when I was numb, I didn't feel anything, and I was just like, no enjoyment, no sadness. And now I can appreciate the depths of depression, or the depths of sadness,
Hmm.
because I know it's temporary. And
Yeah.
I know it's only because I was up here, and now it's come down here. And hopefully in life we spend more time up here, and less time down here. But for me, it's kind of like, well, here I am again. This is like, how quick can I get back up? But
Yeah.
the quicker I sink into it, like you're saying, put on that sad music, spend the day in bed, like crying my eyes out or whatever else, it's like I'm always amazed at how quickly I end back up here. And then the other thing I think that's important that Mama Gina also taught us that I had to use lately, because again, I've been moving my body, I've been feeling spontaneous joy, I've been feeling like so much just radiating out of my body. And I get so excited about not just the feeling of joy, but the things that that feeling of joy is attracting in my life. So there's been a lot of good coming into my life lately. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even keep up with it all. I can't digest it in fast enough. Right. And
Right.
so I'm like trying to call friends to be like, can I just like share this with you? Because if I don't share it with you, it's gonna turn to shit. Like I gotta digest it. I need to celebrate with somebody else, that this good thing is happening.
Yeah.
So that's how, there's pleasure in the good, but the pleasure can be, too much joy can
Yep.
be a problem too, because it like we can't receive, we can't hold anymore, we can't bring any more, and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm like, let me just digest this. So yeah, I love that idea too.
Yeah.
And I noticed, thank you for everybody who's with us live. If you have any questions for either Angela or myself, or if there's something that you want to comment, and if you're resonating with anything that we're sharing here, please pipe in. Would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Um, any stories, any experiences, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts coming up, or questions, or examples for you, Angela?
Yeah, well, just when you were talking, it made me think of like the beginning of this whole pandemic when everything went into lockdown. There was just so much unknown and everything. And I remember feeling like just really uncomfortable, of course, like a lot of us did. And this huge part of dread came in, and I was avoiding dread like with all I could, right? Like, I'm not going to go there, I'm not doing it.
Mhm.
And so I just felt like crap. And so a lot of times we have these emotions that we're trying to avoid because they're like scary to go into. And then as soon as I was like really able to connect with that and like listen to what it needed, it like really dissipated within like minutes. And so
Mm.
like, there's so much value of like being with our emotions, even the scarier ones or the darker ones, because um, they usually get a lot louder, right, when we're trying to avoid them and act like they're not there, right? And so it makes a huge difference when we can like slow down, like, okay, I feel dread or I feel angry, and like, what does this mean? Like, what is it trying to tell me?
So true. And it's always way scarier in thought than it actually is to do.
Yeah.
It's so I would recommend for everybody that's watching this right now, write down like, what is the scariest thing for you? Like, what is it that you're not facing?
Yeah.
For me, it's been financial shit that
Hmm.
was still left over from my divorce and that whole chaos. And then the pandemic just reignited it and added more.
Yep.
And then I'm like, oh, I can't figure it out myself. And it was true. I couldn't figure it out myself. I
Yeah.
had to hire a coach, an accountant, a bookkeeper, and
Mhm.
and a personal assistant. So now I have a team. And it's like I spend, 2 to 3 hours a week just plugging away, plugging away. It's not fun. I get, my head hurts. Like I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But I have somebody there with me that I pay to come and hold me accountable, and we do it together.
Nice.
And I'm making big progress. And now I'm seeing all this good happen, right? And I'm like, wow, this is not even as scary or as hard as I thought it would be, because I'm facing it and I'm not doing it alone. I'm doing it in a team.
Well, everything always looks scary when you only think about it. And it's kind of like in the distance, right? And I think a lot of people get really a lot of fear about getting stuck in their like darker emotions or the things, right? And so um, that's like why you can actually witness it and be with it, and it actually does go away and kind of dissolve and like get calmer. But it takes a little bit of practice to do that well, and that's why it's really helpful to have a coach or something too, because somebody can hold you in those difficult moments. So
I feel like I always need a coach. I mean, I go times without, but then I got to like start up again because my life just zooms forward so fast.
yeah,
And I think for a lot of us, we see the price tag and we're like, oh, because we think like, oh, we don't, what else could we do with that money? But a lot of times it's like we don't think of like, how much money could we make by investing that money, by
Right.
freeing up our energy, by having an accountability partner, by knowing that we're showing up to face those dark areas or to expand on those things, that dream that we've always wanted, right? And to be a more whole and integrated self, to improve our sex lives,
Yeah.
to have more pleasurable sex, but like deeper, more intimate relationships.
Yeah.
I
Better
think
orgasms.
whether alone or with others. Yeah. I mean, but and even like, how do you have a more orgasmic life, right? And you have to be open, you have to let things flow through you to even to even have an orgasm. You have to surrender, you
Mhm.
have to let what's coming through come through, and you have to face the blocks, and those blocks are going to be different for everybody. And I know another thing for me, especially in my younger years, it was like so hard to let go of my pride. Like,
Mm.
I never wanted to be vulnerable. I never wanted to feel vulnerable because, having gone through so much trauma, I just was always trying to hold it together and trying to appear stronger than, because I was so sensitive on the inside. And so, being in these spaces, and I still don't like being vulnerable unless it's a safe space. If it feels safe, then I don't have really a problem being vulnerable. But, how do we create safety in our body? That again, that's the self-trust. How do we create safety around us,
Mhm.
and really just feel into those dark places, or those scary places, or those things that we don't want to feel? It's not so bad. And I think often we're afraid we're going to get stuck there, and sometimes people do. They get stuck in depression, they get stuck in anxiety, you know um, and that's when you have to reach your hand out for help and get a coach or a therapist or somebody that can, you know, help pull you out. But knowing that we are resilient beings and we're transformational beings,
Yeah.
and we have the power. And that's the other thing I want to say, is that for me, I don't like knowing that there's anything that has power over me.
Mhm.
Whether it's my checking account balance, or my um, a food, or sugar, or any of these things. I'm like, okay, if I'm noticing that it has power over me and I can't just like take it or leave it, or it's affecting my mood, or it's affecting my day, I'm like, okay, there's an issue here.
Yeah.
Taking back the power, and I'm gonna redefine this relationship, that sort of thing. um, so yeah, I'm just curious what other people are feeling about that, or if you're able to be honest enough with yourself. You don't have to put it in the comments. You don't have to be um, honest with us right now, but are you honest enough with yourself to say, what has power over me? What am I afraid of? What am I avoiding? And when you start to actually face that, it might take you years, it could take you decades even before you face that. But once you do, oh, it's exhilarating. You'll feel like a superhuman.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why you build a foundation, and that's why maybe you have a coach or something so you can like be really resourced. And so when face things that are hard, because it's not like nothing ever it's gonna ever gonna happen to you again just because you like get empowered and all that stuff. There's gonna be things you're gonna encounter, and so there's not about getting a quick fix, but it's being really resourced and like teaching your nervous system how to feel safe. And so when those things happen, you feel like you can still thrive instead of being like, holy crap, I'm done, I'm over it, like, what I mean? Because a lot of us haven't been really taught to resource and connect to ourselves that way. And so like I said, it's like really giving yourself a really beautiful foundation so that you can thrive in all areas of your life is how I kind of see it. So
And I would say, I would add on to that too, that that's almost like the definition of doing your work. You know how like when people are dating or they're looking for
mhm.
a romantic partner, they're like, I want somebody who's done their work. And I
Yeah.
say too, I want somebody who's done their work, because I've done a lot of work on myself.
Yeah.
But that part of doing the work, it doesn't mean that you've healed from everything.
Mhm.
You've It means that you have the skills, that you're ready for anything.
Yep.
You've healed what you were already served.
Yeah.
Or most of what you were already served, or you're working on it actively, and you have the skills and, like you said, the resources to move through, because that's a person
Mhm.
that you're now a safe person. Anybody is going to want to, I mean, it's one thing you could be, let's just use money is such a easy example to use with this. Somebody could come in with a trust fund and they're forevermore going to be financially safe, right? Until who knows, something happens, some kind of something happens and that they gamble it all away or whatever, and they don't have the skills to bring in more abundance, or they don't have the skills or the resources to bring in more money. If you think about this with, let's say, trauma
Yeah.
or mental health or being able to roll with the punches of life, has somebody been tested? Have they been tested? Have they been able to navigate through? I think that's really important when we look at doing the work. And the work is never fully done. I was just saying this to another friend of mine today, the one that has all the dating partners. So
Yeah.
it's not like we're looking for somebody who's 80 years old and has figured out life already. You know, it's like we're all on a process. We're all growing.
Yeah.
We all still have things to do.
All right. I think that's where that true empowerment can come from, right? It's like when you know your needs, you know your desires, and then you're so resourced that when things do go down or whatever, right, that you're like, okay, this is hard and painful, but I got this. Like that's when you feel really powerful, right? I mean, it's not like you're like skating through life and nothing ever happens to you again. And like you're like, yay, I won or whatever. It's that's not how life works. It's like I said, a lot of us don't even learn how to like connect to our needs and to be resourced and to calm our own nervous systems down if we are in a moment of stress or whatever. And so I think that's where true empowerment comes from, is knowing that you can show up for those things and be okay and thrive still.
I would say that also would be radical self-trust, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
radical self-trust. You've built it, you've created it. For
Mhm.
sure. Well, I'm noticing the time. It's about 10 after the hour. So we could wrap this up, but I want to let people know where to find you if
Mhm.
they are interested in working with you one-on-one. I already mentioned my trauma healing group that starts September 13th. It's virtual. If you're interested in that, it's a year-long program. You've got my website right there on the screen, natashaedwina.com, so you can look it up there, contact me there, and the links will be in the bio too. And your website also, Angela, will be in the bio by tomorrow when people look at this replay.
Nice.
But how should they contact you? What's the best way?
Well, yeah, my website is radicalself-trust.com. And I'm on Instagram at Self Trust Coaching. And those are good ways to contact me. And my information's in my bio links if you want to email me or contact me in any way. So,
Hmm. Otherwise, you might see either of us at an S Factor dance class
yep.
somewhere in the
Beautiful.
city. All right. Well, it's been a lot of fun connecting with you again, and I look forward to our next meeting. And thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. And I hope you meet us again next Monday at the same time. Kirti will be back, and have a wonderful, pleasurable rest of your week with some radical self trust.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Bye.